the sheepman left, I went back to my book. As before, I became Ibn Armut Hasir, the author of the Diary of an Ottoman Tax Collector. I walked the streets of Istanbul during the day, collecting taxes. But when evening came, I returned home to feed my parakeet. A razor-thin crescent of white moon floated in the night sky. I could hear someone playing a flute in the distance. Having lit the incense for my room, my African servant moved about, chasing away the mosquitoes with something that resembled a fly sweater. A beautiful young girl, one of my 3 wives, was waiting for me in my bedroom. It was she who served me my meals each evening. "It's a fine moon," she said to me. "Tomorrow it will be the new moon and the sky will be dark." "We must feed the parakeet," I said. "Didn't you feed the parakeet a little while ago?" she asked. "You're right, I did," said the me that was Ibn Armut Hasir. The girl's silken body glinted in the light of the razor-thin crescent moon. I was spellbound. "It's a fine moon," she repeated. "The new moon will shape our destinies." "That would be terrific," I said. Like a blind dolphin, the night of the new moon silently drew near. The old man came to check on me that evening. He was delighted to find me lost in my book. Seeing how happy he was made me feel a little happier. No matter what the situation may be, I still take pleasure in witnessing the joy of others. "I've got to give you credit," he said, scratching his jaw. "You've made far more headway than I anticipated. You're quite a boy." "Thank you, sir," I replied. "I do love being praised." "The sooner you finish committing those books to memory, the sooner you can leave," the old man said to me. He raised one finger in the air. "Understood?" "Yes," I said. "Is anything bothering you?" "Yes," I said. "Can you tell me if mother and my pet starling are all right? That's got me very worried." The old man frowned. "The world follows its own course," he said. "Each possesses his own thoughts, each treads his own path. So it is with your mother, and so it is with your starling. As it is with every one, the world follows its own course." I had no idea what he was talking about, but I dutifully said yes when he had finished. The girl appeared not long after the old man had left. As always, she slipped in through the crack in the door. "It's the night of the new moon," I said. The girl sat down quietly on the bed. She seemed exhausted. She had lost her color and had grown transparent so that I could see the wall behind her. "It's because of the new moon," she said. "It robs us of so much. All it does to me is make my eyes sting a little." The girl looked at me and nodded. "The moon doesn't affect you, so you will be all right. I'm sure you will be able to find a way out." "And you?" "Don't worry about me. It doesn't look as though we can make it out together, but I'm sure I can join you later." "But how can I find my way back without you?" She didn't answer. Instead, she came close and planted a small kiss on my cheek. Then she slipped through the door and vanished. I sat there on the bed, dazed for a long time. The kiss had shaken me up so much I couldn't think straight. At the same time, my anxiety had turned into an anxiety quite lacking in anxiousness. And any anxiety that is not especially anxious is, in the end, an anxiety hardly worth mentioning. Not long afterward, the sheepman returned. He was holding a plate piled high with donuts. Hey, what's the matter? You look zonked. Are you sick or something? No, I was just thinking. Did I hear right? You're making a run for it tonight. Can I come along? Of course, you can come. But who told you? I passed some girl in the corridor a minute ago, and she told me. Said we were both leaving together. I had no idea there was a girl that pretty around here. Is she a pal of yours? Well, I stammered. I see. Gosh, it would be great to have someone cool like that for a pal. If we can get out of here, Mr. Sheepman, I bet you'll have lots of cool friends. That would be terrific, said the sheepman. But if we don't make it out, there will be hell to pay for both of us. By hell to pay, you mean the jar of 10,000 caterpillars? That's about the size of it, the sheepman said mournfully. The thought of sharing a jar with 10,000 caterpillars for 3 days sent a chill up my spine. Yet the warmth of the fresh doughnuts in my belly and the girl's kiss on my cheek had dispelled all my fears. I put away 3 doughnuts and the sheepman had 6. I'm a lost cause on an empty stomach, the sheepman said, by way of apology. He wiped some sugar from the corner of his mouth with a stubby finger. Somewhere a clock struck 9. The sheepman stood up and shook his sleeves several times to reacquaint the sheep costume with his body. It was time for us to leave. He removed the ball and chain from my ankle. We exited the room and set off down the dim corridor. My feet were bare, for I had left my shoes in the cell. My mother would hit the roof when she learned I'd left them somewhere. They were very good leather shoes, and she had given them to me as a birthday present. Still, it wasn't worth risking the chance that their noise might wake up the old man. I thought about those shoes as we walked to the big metal door. The sheepman was leading the way. I was half a head taller, so his 2 ears were bobbing up and down right in front of my nose the whole time. Hey, Mr. Sheepman, I whispered to him. What? He whispered back. How good is the old man's hearing? Tonight's the new moon, so he'll be fast asleep in his room. But he's a sharp cookie, as you've seen. So you'd best forget those shoes. Shoes you can replace, but you can't replace your brains or your life. You're right about that, Mr. Sheepman. If he wakes up and comes after me with that willow switch, it's curtains. I'm no good to you then. When he whips me, I'm helpless. It's like I become his slave. Does the switch have some special power? You got me, said the sheepman. He thought for a moment. It seems to be a pretty regular willow switch, but I don't know. But when he starts hitting you with it, you're helpless, right? That's the size of it. So you'd best forget those shoes. I'll put them out of my mind, I said. We walked a little farther down the long corridor without speaking. Hey, said the sheepman, what is it? You forgot the shoes, didn't you? Yes, I've forgotten them, I replied. Thanks to his question, however, the shoes that I had managed to forget walked right back into my mind. The staircase was cold and slippery. The front edges of the stone steps worn round with use. Every so often I stepped on what felt like a bug. When you're climbing barefoot in the pitch dark, that's not a great feeling. Sometimes the thing was soft and squishy, sometimes it crunched. Darn, I thought, I should have worn those shoes after all. At long last, we reached the top of the staircase and arrived at the metal door. The sheep man pulled a large ring of keys from his pocket. Got to do this quietly. Don't want to wake up the old man. That's right, I said. He inserted a key and turned it to left. There was a loud kashunk, and the door opened with a long screech. Nothing quiet about it at all. From here on, it's a really complicated maze, I said. You're right, said the sheepman. There is a maze, now that I think of it. Can't remember it too well, but we'll figure something out. Hearing that made me a little uneasy. The tricky thing about mazes is that you don't know if you've chosen the right path until the very end. If it turns out you were wrong, it's usually too late to go back and start again. That's the problem with mazes. As I expected, the sheepman had to try a number of routes and retreat a number of times. Yet I could feel that somehow we were getting closer and closer to our destination. Sometimes he would stop to run his finger along the wall and lick it with a look of great concentration, or squat to press his ear against the floor, or converse in undertones with the spiders who built their webs along the ceiling. Faced with intersecting paths, he might spin in place like a whirlwind before choosing which one he would take. Such was the manner in which the sheepman recalled the route through the maze, a far cry from the way most people would remember. All the while time marched on. Dawn was drawing near, and the pitch black night of the new moon seemed to be softening bit by bit. The sheepman and I hurried along. We knew we had to reach the last door before daylight. Otherwise, the old man would wake to find us gone and would set off in pursuit. Think we can make it? I asked. Yeah, it's looking good. From here on out, it's a piece of cake. It was clear that the sheepman knew the rest of the way. We raced down the corridors, turning first one way, then the other, without pause. Finally, the last corridor lay dead ahead. We could see a door at the end and light leaking through its cracks. See, I told you, the sheepman said proudly. I had it figured out all along. All we have to do now is go through this door. Then you and I will be free. He opened the door, and there was the old man, waiting for us. It was the same room where I had first met him, room 107, in the basement of the library. He sat there in front of his desk, his eyes fixed on me. Next, the old man sat a big black dog, a dog with green eyes and a jewel-encrusted collar. He had massive legs and 6 claws on each paw. His ears forked at the tips, and his nose was reddish-brown sunburned color. It was the same dog who had bitten me so many years before. My pet starling's bloody body was clamped between his teeth. I let out a small cry and started to collapse backward, but the sheepman caught me. We've been waiting and waiting, the old man said. What took you so long, eh? I can explain everything, sir, began the sheepman. Silence, you fool! Thundered the old man. He pulled the willow switch from his back pocket and whipped it against the desk. The dog pricked up his ears, and the sheepman fell silent. The room grew deathly still. Now then, said the old man, how shall I dispose of the two of you? So you weren't fast asleep with the new moon and all? I asked timidly. You're a cheeky one, aren't you? The old man sneered. I don't know where you obtain your information, but I'm not so easy to fool. I can read the two of you as easily as I can a watermelon patch in broad daylight. The room went black before my eyes. My carelessness had ruined everything. Even my pet starling had been sacrificed. I had lost my good shoes, and I would never see my mother again. And you, said the old man, pointing his switch straight at the sheepman. I'm going to slice you up nice and fine and feed you to the centipedes. The sheepman hid behind me, trembling from head to foot. As for you, my young friend, the old man said, pointing at me, I'll feed you to this dog. He'll devour you alive. It will be a slow death. You'll die screaming, but your brains are mine. They won't be as creamy as they would have been if you had finished those books, but I'm not picky. I'll suck up every last drop. The old man bared his teeth in a wicked smile. The dog's green eyes glittered with excitement. It was then that I realized that the starling between the dog's teeth was growing. When it reached the size of a chicken, it forced the dog's jaws open like a car jack. The dog tried to howl, but it was too late. The dog's mouth ripped. There was the sound of shattering bones. The old man frantically whipped the starling with his willow switch, but the bird's body continued to swell until it was the size of a bull, pressing the old man fast against the wall. The small room filled with the sound of powerful wings. Run! Now's your chance, said the starling. It was the voice of the girl. But what about you? I asked the starling who was the girl. Don't worry about me, I'll follow later. Quick, now! If you don't hurry, you'll be lost for the eternity, said the girl who was a starling. I did as she said. Grabbing the sheepman's hand, I ran from the room. I never looked back. It was early morning. The library was deserted. We raced up the stairs and across the main hall to the reading room, forced open a window and tumbled out. Then we ran as fast as we could to the park, where we collapsed on the lawn. We lay there, gasping for air with our eyes closed. I didn't open mine for quite some time. When I did, the sheepman was gone. I stood up and looked around. I called his name at the top of my lungs, but there was no reply. The morning sun was casting its first rays against the leaves of the trees. The sheepman had disappeared without a word to me, just as the morning dew had evaporated. My mother had set a hot breakfast on the table and was waiting for me when I got home. She didn't ask me anything, not about why I hadn't come home from school, or where I had spent the last 3 nights, or why I was shoeless. Not a single question or complaint. It wasn't like her at all. My pet starling was gone. Only its empty cage remained. I didn't ask what happened. It seemed best to avoid that topic altogether. My mother's profile seemed to have darkened very slightly, as if shadows were gathering around her, but that may have been no more than my impression. After that, I never visited the city library again. I knew I should seek out one of the big shots who ran the place to explain what had happened to me, and to tell him about the cell-like room hidden deep in the basement. Otherwise, other child might have to endure the awful experience that I went through. Nevertheless, the mere sight of the library building at dusk was enough to stop me in my tracks. I do occasionally think about the new leather shoes I left behind in the basement, though. That leads me to memories of the sheepman and the beautiful voiceless girl. Did they really exist? How much of what I remember really happened? To be honest, I can't be certain. All I know for sure is that I lost my shoes and my pet starling. My mother died last Tuesday. She had been suffering from a mysterious illness, and that morning she quietly slipped away. There was a simple funeral, and now I'm totally alone. No mother, no pet starling, no sheepman, no girl. I lie here by myself in the dark at 2 o'clock in the morning and think about that cell in the library basement, about how it feels to be alone and the depth of the darkness surrounding me. Darkness as pitch black as the night of the new moon.